And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final scheduled town hall for the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners this November 12th, 2014. And I would like to introduce Mr. David Gollaby, who is the president of the Happy Valley Business Alliance.
Hello, I'm David Gollaby of the Happy Valley Business Alliance. Thank you all for coming tonight. On behalf of the HVBA, the City of Happy Valley, I welcome you to tonight's town hall meeting with Clackamas County Commissioners. We are happy to have them with us tonight to discuss issues of importance to you. Commissioners, welcome to Happy Valley. Thank you for braving the weather. Yeah. Let me introduce them first to you. First, he's the MC for tonight's meeting, and Clackamas County Chairman John Ludlow. Commissioner Jim Bernard, Commissioner Paul Savas, and the other two had prior arrangements this evening. Before we begin, let me tell you a little about the Happy Valley Business Alliance. Our purpose is to advance awareness of the greater Happy Valley business area, attractions and special events to promote a healthy business climate and to encourage high ethics and professional standards. Tonight, you the citizens have an opportunity to ask your commissioners a question about any county issue. We have allocated 90 minutes, and I hear 90 minutes exactly, for this discussion, and the meeting will promptly end at 8:30. Again, thank you for coming, and thanks to our county commissioners for visiting us tonight. I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, David. Well done. Well, the format is quite easy. Anybody can ask a question, as you said. Try to make it a short question, not necessarily a statement. And then, since we're down to 3 commissioners tonight, we will probably, all attempt to give an answer as necessary, but I welcome anybody to come up to the microphone at this time and ask your question. Now, we had to prod people out in Estacada. I never thought that would be the case in Happy Valley. So, anybody? Or, all right, meeting adjourned, that's it,
We can go alphabetically. So, with the A's, please stand up and come forward.
Well, I was hoping Martha would be here so we could get all the answers first.
Oh, it's a great Karnak here. I think going on with something. We've never had quite this shyness. Thank you. Oh, Mayor DeReamer, isn't it?
Speaking of shy.
Oh.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for being here this evening. Question regarding North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, which we are a part of now that didn't pass the November election. What is the plan, or is there a report that's come from NCPRD and what the Commissioners are going to do?
We've kind of been going over this recently. I'd asked for some staff time with Public and Government Affairs to find out from some people who are directly involved in this why this failed. Now, we all got a pretty good guess, but we will be sending out a brief questionnaire to all those candidates who ran for board positions, as well as our existing DAB, District Advisory Board. And I'd like to hear it from people who were involved, who were part of the participating in it, possibly campaigning for it, some possibly against it. But hear from them first, because they're going to have good insight as to how it failed. Then, at the first of the year, because our schedule is very packed the remainder of this calendar year, at the first part of the year, we'll aggregate that information, talk to our staff additionally, and decide on our direction. Our possibilities are just go on with our governance and try to keep our parks in the same shape as they're enjoyed right now, or to send it out possibly back with possibly a much less ask in the way of cents per thousand. So that's just kind of a synopsis of where we are currently. We're going to analyze. Commissioners?
Well, I attended the DAB, the board for the Parks District today. They expressed interest in going out again. They're not going to give up. And I think, it's pretty obvious any tax increase, is something people are going to consider voting in opposition of. So I think that if we take the time and work and figure out where we got the no votes and analyze why we got them, then we figure out, can we resolve those or do we reduce the rate? But it doesn't do any good to create another district and not get more money. Why would we do it then? So the board, I believe today, the DAB said we want to go forward and do it again. And we'll look at when to do that and when the timing's right. A lot of measures passed that were tax increases. So there was some appetite for that, but how it was sold, I think that we could do a better job with perhaps a list of projects that show the benefit in the various communities. But, when I served as mayor of Milwaukee, we tried to annex to the fire district at an increase. It failed miserably. So the next thing we did is at no increase, and of course it passed quite well. But it doesn't do you any good, like I said, to pass it and get nothing new.
Yeah, my comment is and I would think there was a discussion at the District Advisory Board meeting just a couple hours ago, was looking at the precinct numbers and see how and who voted where and why, and look at the other competing local issues, measures that were before the voters, one being the safety levy for Happy Valley, for example. And as we've done our surveys, we've always have found that public safety ranks really high, and it's usually supported, and parks are mid on the lower side. So if the climate right now in the area is that public safety is a 50-50 thing there or about, then I think it's natural for one to assume that maybe it's not the right time, and that parks would be not rank anywhere near as high as public safety. So it could just be just bad timing. Maybe the taxpayers aren't in the best mood right now, but I think we need to be sensitive to that. I'd also like to make sure that the partners in the NCPRD, both the City of Happy Valley and the City of Milwaukee, are comfortable with the relationship, and any problems or issues that are out there are resolved before we go farther. I certainly don't want to move forward with any uncertainty.
I can see you all lined up for that next question. Michael, you're going to be there quiet all evening? I'd be surprised. I can start calling you by name, here, Markley's going to get up. All right.
I would like to ask a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm Mark Lee Drake, Council President, Happy Valley. And with us here, we have Tom Ellis from our council, Britt Sherman, our council-elect, and Michael Morrow from our Happy Valley Council. So we're all here.
Uh-oh.
Not like that other city. Anyway, what steps are you doing to attract business to Clackamas County, and where do you think that those businesses can locate? I mean, like Malala, we're talking that Canby Industrial Center. So give us some idea what your thinking is on that. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. Our Economic Development Commission has been, last 3 years, has looked at infrastructure and transportation needs for businesses. We have looked at land supply, employment lands. We've looked at traded sector types of businesses and what their needs are. And so we'll be getting that report, I believe, December 2nd, here just a few weeks, couple weeks. We'll be getting that report. And that employment lands map are employment lands that were identified in 2009, approved by the board in 2009. We are now in the position to kind of come up with a bargain similar to Washington County's bargain. So we've been looking at the map. I've been looking at the map the board has and say, what can we pull off the map for and ask for employment lands to further that, knowing that that's one of our big needs. And really the answer is everything's challenged. It's either challenged from an infrastructure standpoint or it's politically a hot potato. So frankly, under the current rules, you need a city willing to cooperate to bring in anything, and that city is supposed to adopt in their comp plan or concept plan that new area added in. The current employment areas that are within a city or within the county that are out there have constraints, and they're transportation constraints for the most part. In some areas, it's basic infrastructure, whether it's natural gas or adequate sewer and so forth. But transportation is the common denominator in virtually every employment land area we have out there. And whether there's transportation there today, or it's just lack of, it's congestion related, or it's access to I-5 for Canby, for example, those are big challenges. We don't have very much. There was an employment land study that was done in 2011, and they found that Clackamas County in the region, in the metro boundary region, that Washington County had several properties, and Multnomah County had several properties, and Clackamas County had one, just one property. And it's in that one property, not ideal and not ready to go. And so that's our big issue. That's our big challenge, I would say, is getting the investment in transportation for that. Our Economic Development Commission has been very active in trying to contact businesses, find out what their needs are. And we just got a study report today, this afternoon, on some of the traded sector businesses and what some of their typical needs may be and what the growth expectations are. So it actually looks very promising if you look at it from an industry standpoint. We're in pretty good standing. We have a diverse array of traded sector businesses. But how to grow that, and we learned today, which is not a surprise, that just adding one or two locations or one or two new sites will catalyze a lot more development. And a lot more job growth. So huge need for job growth. We're graduating kids faster than we're creating jobs. Our population is growing faster than we can create jobs, and that's a recipe and a formula for more unemployment, and we got to change that.
So I don't know what year we are in the process, but we're looking at our regulations and trying to make them more flexible, allow greater opportunity for businesses to expand, and for different businesses to come into certain areas. So I don't know what year we are in that process, but I think we're like in the third year. Right. And so hopefully that'll allow greater opportunity. So I'll bring up something that may be a little controversial, and that is a business license. One thing that happened on election day is that we've got a new business coming to town. You know what that is? Marijuana stores. So one of my concerns is that we may not have the ability to regulate them using a business license that a city has. If they fail to conform to the rules, you know, the Liquor Commission oftentimes will slap their hands. But a city with a business license could revoke it. And I think that's a powerful tool that the county doesn't have. The other thing is we've had businesses in Clackamas County that open their doors and invest money. Then they find out they're not zoned properly. And so this might give us the ability to communicate to a business when they come to town and make sure that they're going into the right area. The other is things that other state agencies do, which do they store fire things that are hazardous, various things like that we might be able to find out about. And the other is, just supplying them information, that opportunities, grant opportunities that may be available. But we're not going to kind of go that way right now. So we're going to look at how we can control some of those issues using specific zoning. For example, marijuana stores, medical marijuana stores, how close they are to schools, and we're going to have a discussion about time, place, and manner. Today we decided to let the 4 businesses that have marijuana licenses already for medical marijuana to go ahead and open their doors. They are within that standard allowed by law, but my concern is what about the future ones? Whether you support licensing of marijuana or not, I think we have to really take a good look at whether that's the proper location. And frankly, if they're going to be there, I hope they're successful. And so that means we need to limit the number of them that they are. And I'm very worried about McLaughlin and 82nd being the street of choice for all the different marijuana distributors that will pop up all over the place. So I know that's kind of different, but it is a new business coming to town.
Yeah, I wish we could get the revenue off of them, which they may cause problem-wise. As Paul said, the EDC, our Economic Development Committee, has worked hard for us for years, and it's nice to see them focus on, and their focus is going to be on why are existing businesses here, and they'll be certainly working amongst the committee themselves, let alone reaching out to other businesses. Why are you here? What are the obstacles that keep you from growing? And are you looking for a new location? That kind of stuff is very important things to know, and something our economic development group, certainly our business economic development, do a good job in finding the need-wise. In addition to that, asset mapping is something that they do now, because the big thing about businesses, not only here, but ones that may want to come here, is they've got to find out what's here. And the asset mapping, if you've never gone and used that tool on Clackamas County site, it will tell you every available parcel. And they work closely with commercial brokers to let people know what is available in Clackamas County. Again, business economic development has spent lottery funds in trying to enhance communication with those businesses, surveys that may help them as well. But, you know, I'm not in favor of business licenses, I'll just tell you, in the county for a variety of reasons. But, you know, our businesses we really value. But I believe that most of the information that we need can be obtained from the Corporation Commission. So, you know, the information is there. As far as marijuana goes, hey, I voted against it. I bet you every commissioner on our commission voted against that. But in realistic terms, now this is recreational, it passed in Clackamas County. If it hadn't passed in Clackamas County, I would have probably recommended, and then the commission would have entertained, whether we should put it on the ballot to find out if people really want to allow that or not. But it passed by several percentage points in this county. So I had said when we were going to come up with a vote on medical marijuana, on recreational marijuana, that medical marijuana and the concerns of that may become moot, considering the law of the land is they're going to be selling, what, pot gummy bears and cotton candy. Jim told me he went out to some seminar where they said they had that kind of stuff. We're really worried about brownies and everything else out there. The medical marijuana, you have to have a card to get it, and they're pretty strict. They have to have a televised system of who comes in, who goes out. They have to have an elaborate alarm system. So I'm not so worried about that. I'm worried about retaining the businesses we already have here, providing them with the opportunity and the information necessary for them to consider expanding and staying here in Clackamas County. We got to take care of our own while also welcoming all to Clackamas County. We have key clusters, which again have been identified by the Business and Economic Development, and we will continue to concentrate on those and enhancing those key clusters. Thank you. All right, it's Michael's turn.
He's leaving, no.
Yeah, that'd be great when he walks out the door.
Well, as long as we're talking about business development, Clackamas County, even though this may be controversial and it goes against my idea, which is to have all one-way roads out of Clackamas County, we have a tremendous opportunity with all our natural resources. What's the county doing to capitalize on that and get those kind of tourist and travels and recreation dollars into the county?
Well, I will tell you of the work that our tourism department has done recently. We featured kind of some special things they did for Austin, Texas, where they really focused in on Mount Hood territory. That is constantly being enhanced and expanded, that whole plan to expose the nation to what a great opportunity and a winter wonderland that our mountain area is. So they've done some great outreach, and they're able to measure a lot of their effect by the hits they have online. And they've gone up rather substantially with, again, the reemphasis of the Mount Hood Territory program. So that's our biggest draw, tourism-wise. I would like to tell you that some of the outstanding fishing up to Highway 224 is also a big draw, and it is. However, you can only get up there by pilot car, and that's if you live in the local area, which is a real drain for the Estacada area, because Estacada has some wonderful natural beauties up there, but they're having trouble getting to it, and it looks like that pilot car program operated by ODOT is going to continue through spring until the monsoons come and wash down those cliff faces exactly what it will. Then they'll ascertain the safety of that highway continuing. But we've also, don't forget, we enacted some pretty strict rules in our county parks, specifically Barton, Carver, et al., where alcohol cannot be consumed there or transported through there to our waterways. And that's made a big difference for the families and individuals who want to go up down that river on a regular basis. It's really made it more family-oriented, and the neighbors up and down that river thank us profusely for that, for finally enforcing that law, which was already on the books.
To add to that, there was a transient room tax ordinance that was passed a long time ago, and basically when someone stays overnight at a hotel or a bed and breakfast or even at an RV thing, there's a fee paid that goes towards this tax. We're able to track, by virtue of that, we're able to track how many people, how many heads on beds, and that creates a revenue stream for more tourism dollars, resources to invest in marketing this region. So our tourism board has done quite the job, our TDC board, and from all the metrics we've seen, they've been doing a great job, and our tourism in this area is growing. And Austin, Texas was a site where they actually focused on marketing, and then they're able to track how many people are flying in from there to visit this area. So there was a measurable, positive measurable outcome in that investment. So we're doing quite a bit, actually, and I think we're doing pretty well. We do have a lot of assets, and one of those being potentially is the Willamette Falls project. Should that get off the ground, even though that's still a draw, it could be even a larger draw if we were able to move that project forward.
Clackamas County is a great place to live. I mean, the people are moving here from all around the country to the metro area because of the what we offer. We've done some farm to table programs. Farmers markets are bringing that food into the cities and around the community. And our wineries, they're just every year there's more and more wineries. I think we'll be challenging Napa Valley here, not so a distant future. And so I think we're really working hard to make sure that citizens all over the world. Matter of fact, we go to Germany, a giant tourism conference yearly for, I think we have a 3-year commitment. Australia, New Zealand, and those folks are coming here. For one thing, Australia dollars generally are quite a bit higher than U.S. dollars, so you go to places where their dollar value is much greater than ours, and they just love to come and spend money in Clackamas County and in Oregon.
Really quickly, going back to I think that Clackamas County enjoys the second highest per capita income in the entire state. So you go, well, that means people that live here make money, but do they work here? And so we go back to the business side of this. It's great to have people live here who are affluent and work somewhere in the region, but it's even better to have those people work here and the businesses associated with supplying that great income. So we're looking forward to enjoying both. It's a great place to live, but also a great place to work, and we want to continue to enhance and push that.
I'm going to ask my one more.
Sure.
Speaking of another natural resource, it's the forests. Can you comment on what you're doing to help open up the forest for good forest management practices, but to harvest the forest?
Well, we have 3,000 acres ourselves, and we harvest very sustainably, and the income goes to our park system. Now, we have gone back, I only 1 year, and even though I had 2 years to do it, but I decided to go last year. And every year these commissioners lobby the federal government to allow sustainable harvesting. Now, you've heard of the Wyden bill. and there's others that have tried to come together on at least some agreement for sustainable harvesting, which used to bring us in revenue millions of dollars that we would use for schools, roads, et cetera. But now the Secure Rural Funds is what it's called. We were surprised to get some last year, nearly $1 million, and we've been told this year there's not a chance. So, you know, it would open up a lot of job opportunities. You're absolutely right, in this county. It would bring a lot of timber cut revenue to this county, which we could use for very needed things like our roadways, which we are down $17 million per year in, and it's only going to get worse. And we've talked about this at least since I've taken office 2 years ago. Gentlemen?
Yeah, it's been tied up in court, litigation. We don't have the federal laws on water, unnavigable waters, water runoff due to foresting practices. I mean, there's just, we haven't had the support in Congress, haven't had support in the U.S. Senate to make those changes, and it's kind of pretty well locked us up. And that's something that we all have been advocating for since I've been a commissioner. And yet we're kind of stuck. You know, Congressman Schrader, Congressman Walden, Congressman DeFazio, they had worked together on a bill. We've had some feedback from Senator Wyden, you know, but no, we haven't had anything really grab hold in Washington D.C. Senator Merkley, I think's been, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Senator Merkley has pretty well been sponsoring a lot of the water regulations, which happen to aggravate, exacerbate any logging whatsoever by those stiff regulations that they cause. So it's a tough one. Then there's the ONC, which is the state side of it. So we also have the state aspect. So there are state-owned forests, there are federally owned forests, and there's privately owned forests. And there is logging that's taking place on the privately owned. It's the state and federal that we're having our difficulty with.
Well, I think, like John said, the county has about 3,000 acres that we log. We actually have 4,000, but 1,000 of those are in our parks. By the way, that money does not fund North Clackamas Parks.
Oh, good point.
It funds the Parks District. But, you know, we do a really great job. We're on a 50-year cycle, and we move some of those up because they were growing so big, and if they grow too big, we have to ship them out of the county, out of the state, and sometimes they get too big out of the country. So, you know, we're really doing a good job, and now we've reached a level that we paid the golf course off, saved millions of dollars, at least $1 million, in interest payments. So, and now that thing is a money generator for that district. Maybe we should build a golf course for North Clackamas Parks. Maybe in your backyard.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other thing is that we are getting people in the forest, and the Sandy Trail, and we're working with the Forest Service to do more work around Timberline Lodge down. And also those ski facilities are much better partners than they ever were. And so they're all working together to be successful. We have some transportation and parking things that need to be resolved. You know, there's not enough parking for all the cars that we want to go up there. So the bus service that comes out of Sandy has really helped a lot. I guess they've just, you know, the people riding that bus has just shot up. And that hopefully, with partnership with Mount Hood Meadows, which is in another county, we could do a lot to increase. You know, we have a great resource that we have not used. I mean, go around the country, and they really take advantage of that, of the snow, and we don't do that. So we're looking at some potential tram opportunities from Government Camp to Timberline Lodge, and there are folks really interested in investing in that stuff, and we just need to make sure that they stay on board.
Mr. Tuck.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for being here tonight in Happy Valley. I hope you're enjoying your stay. I'm City Manager of Happy Valley, Jason Tuck. I have a couple questions. The first one is on the Area Commission on Transportation, the Act. There's been a lot of discussion about that lately. I was unable to attend your study session this morning and haven't had the opportunity to listen to the tape, so I was wondering if you could give a brief summary of what that is for the viewing audience and those here, and then how the commission is going to approach that, and then also the work that's been done through the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee C4. And if you have time, address climate smart communities
Well, that's my favorite subject.
and other transportation funding options to address the crisis we're facing.
Well, after our long meeting, which really actually ran over, much to my surprise, we, on the act particularly, I asked staff to actually, because I ran out of paper, I was taking notes, and then we moved around and talked about different things, and pretty soon my piece of paper was all muddled up with notes, and I didn't have any more room to write anything. I think where we ended up with is that, for the most part, the recommendation from the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, for the most part, I think was adopted by the board for me to present Monday, November 17th, for the act. A couple modifications to that. I'll let the chair speak to. He kind of summed that up, I think, in a way, with terms, nominated through, yeah.
Yeah.
They were, that the C4 would nominate through there to the Area Commission on Transportation, the city seats, both urban and rural, and the Board of County Commissioners would select the Board of County Commission seat on the act. By the way, an act is an Area Commission on Transportation. And the rural seat would be selected by the Complete Communities Group as determined, as voted on and spoke to last Thursday night at C4. And the business one was the one I think was the change, and the change there being that I guess we wanted to take input, including the EDC, and to submit names for everyone to review. And my direction to staff was take everything and summarize what you heard, because we kind of went around the world a couple times, and I'm not really sure where we exactly ended up, but we're gonna for the most part, we adopted what the C4 did as far as the selection of the group. And for those that are watching, what is C4? It's a Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. Myself and the mayor of Happy Valley are the co-chairs of that group, and there's a member of each city, and members that represent hamlets, villages, special districts like fire, water, and sewer on that board. So it's a kind of a good representation of the county as a whole.
Yeah, I'd say we did do exactly as you said, except for the business one, which we would like to have EDC recommend somebody, and C4 can recommend somebody, 10 people, we don't care, could recommend somebody, and then we would choose that position. But as far as the rural, urban cities, 2, that C4, the rural cities, the coordinating committee, Safe Communities Group, whatever that's called. What is a rural?
Real safe communities.
It was a community leaders group.
Yeah, community leaders group would make their recommendations. So I thought it came out, it went just as C4 would want it to go. And the only thing is I think that all those should come through the commission just so we could see it. I'd like to know who's appointed.
Yeah, I called up Chair Andy Dyke today of Washington County, and wanted to know how his commission has weighed in on these appointments. And he had his greatest heartburn was over the fact that what's interesting about this is, these are recommendations or nominations, wherever they come from, whether it's C4, whether it's from this commission. What's unusual about this makeup is those nominations go to the very committee the person would be serving on, and that group makes a decision on whether our recommendations would be taken or not. And Chair Dyke expressed, and I have this similar problem with that. It would seem like if we have the authority to appoint, and I said appoint, not recommend, nominate, that we should be able to appoint. Whoever we say should be on there, whatever group gets to say it, that should be the end of it. So I will continue to have a problem with recommending to a committee that chooses their own. And normally you say, well, what's the problem? They're probably going to make that appointment anyway, but there's no assurance of that. The last thing we need is a group that has that kind of authority appointing in their own image, whatever image that might be. But the makeup of this group seems yet again to be, in my opinion, way too Portland-centric. We've got Metro representatives, Tri-Met representatives, we've got the City of Portland representatives, and they outweigh any amount of group that Clackamas County may put forward. Let's remember how this whole thing started in 2010. An area community, committee on transportation was proposed for the 125,000 unincorporated residents of Clackamas County that were unrepresented in any act. That was the most unrepresented group in the state of Oregon, and it's gone on like that for a period of years. ODOT doesn't want us to have two ACTs, area committees on transportation. It said that they're pushing for one, and they kind of got the governor's ear in that regard. So if we do have one, the question of it is, will we ever get anything done? Now, something that wasn't mentioned that Paul brought forward to us is the supermajority. They try to build consensus. Now, consensus, regardless, if you look it up, it doesn't necessarily mean unanimous, but they try to build towards that through a consensus basis. The way we are voting is that if a full majority, that is 100%, don't agree, then in order for it to pass, not 51%, but 75% should agree on a pathway, minimum. Now, that allows for the 25% or less to issue what's called basically a minority report on whatever goes forward to the Oregon Transportation Committee. So it's a little bit complicated, and there's still a lot to be done on this. Paul's our official representative on that Oregon Solutions team that's making decisions. But, you know, not any particular group has veto power, but I think they will note very well that both Clackamas and Washington County have some problems with that. And if we don't achieve what we need to in regards to the representation of the people unrepresented in our county, then we will again take that question to the legislature. Now, that was on acts. Now, Paul, you want to go ahead on Climate Smart?
So wait, just let me finish. And I think the important thing is that if we don't get that majority, that will probably say no. We don't want to be part of the act, which I think will put people back at the table and try to figure out a solution. And frankly, you know, we tried to form an act, but there are, you know, folks who didn't want to participate with us. Hood River County, for example. So, then ODOT said, well, we won't do two acts, or we won't. And so we're kind of stuck here. But we need to, you know, enforce our desire to have a louder voice.
Yeah, I think the substantial, noteworthy thing that happened today was the board drew the hard line in the sand and say if it's less than 75% majority or vote, you know, it's actually 23 votes out of 30 people. If it's anything less than that, then that's where we stop. We're done. We're not going to play. We're not going to play ball. And I think we can hopefully get the consideration of the legislature to form our own act, a Clackamas County only act, if we're the only ones who wants to play, and then if the rest of the region wants to move forward with an act, they could, but we might be the first people to actually go to the legislature if we can't get where we want. But we don't want to take a position similar to where we are now, where a lot of the transportation decisions and dollars have gone more towards, you know, to the Portland area, and we've really lacked out over here, and it's you know, it's fact, it's mathematical, you can measure it, and we've been on the losing side of that, and yet, you know, we have tremendous needs. You're going to hear probably transportation throughout almost this whole town hall today. It's going to come up, and when I talk about the climate smart piece, it's more transportation is really what it's all about. But so that's where I'll go next. Climate smart. So climate smart basically is an effort for the region to meet the state requirement, the 2022 requirement to reduce measurable carbon dioxide output by 25% and demonstrate a plan that gets that done. So that's the law that we're facing. That CO2 is obviously from the typical auto light truck traffic that goes through the area. Congestion, bumper-to-bumper congestion and traffic is a known one of the largest contributors to CO2 production that can be, rectified to some degree. We can never solve congestion, but we can sure reduce it. We've done projects in the region, and we just think about, I was using the example today of Sunnyside Avenue. Think of 30 to 35 years ago what Sunnyside was. I remember it as a 2-lane road that was, if you got anywhere near it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, it was bumper to bumper. It was packed through here. And this area never would have developed like it is today had it not been for the expansion, the road expansion through this area where you have, 4 to 6 lanes throughout all of Sunnyside Avenue. And that reduces congestion, that reduces CO2 output. The way, the old saying, read the fine print, this is one of those things where as they're trying to get a December decision in the region, a regional decision by December, the fine print, the language is coming out. That's not really reflecting the conversation that we've had in this region about, okay, well, your plans are fine. We're going to do these projects. We got X amount of money set aside, or committed in our transportation plans for road projects, but the fine print leaves one to wonder if that's really the case at all. And I think that's where we're really struggling. I think we had a joint JPAC MPAC meeting. That was kind of a regional meeting last Friday. A lot of us made a lot of cases and issues about that language and about some of the exhibits that are in that ordinance to be. And so we took a pretty good stand, I believe. We're making a good logical argument so that we putting forth a balanced transportation plan that meets all modes, whether it's road, highways, local streets, transit, walking, bike lanes, all that stuff. But the emphasis has been on this whole program has been heavily weighted, lopsided, frankly, in my opinion, lopsided on anything but highways. It's been active transportation and transit. And as we know, my rough number is about 90% of people that are probably here today and listening drive a car and own a car. Most of us drive, and we don't have good, adequate transit connections everywhere we need to be. So we can't neglect that. This area, Happy Valley, has a chance to grow even further if we get the Sunrise Corridor completed. Phase 2 of Sunrise Corridor, just to the south of this area where we're sitting right now, is opportunity for more economic growth, more jobs, and it will not happen without Phase 2 of Sunrise. So we can't have legislation or ordinances passed in the metro region that discourage that and reprioritize dollars towards more transit, disproportionate level of transit, that is. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I'd just like to add, the conversation, I think it's the wrong conversation. By the way, I drove here at 5:15. The road was bumper to bumper. And what they always tell you, and it's true, you can't overbuild. I mean, every time you build a lane, it'll become congested over time. But it is time, and you've got to get past that. But our issue in Clackamas County was very similar to the Columbia River crossing. It's not whether we oppose or the measures that Metro's looking at. It's about what's important to us. And that's why, we got 205 back on the table, add the additional lanes on 205 where we don't have enough, and it's back on the table. And I think we should push that argument and the Sunrise. It's not about whether you believe in global warming or not. By the way, I do. And if you don't, you're crazy. The planet is warming, whether it's caused by us or not. I believe it is. Certainly is partially caused by us. We need, the truth is, what if you're wrong? If you don't believe it, what if you're wrong? And we can't turn it back around. So we have to be smart. But congestion is a major cause of carbon dioxide production, and we have to address that issue now. And for Clackamas County, it's the Sunrise and 205. So I think we just have to push the conversation to be about those issues. And frankly, in many areas, I think we spend so much time analyzing that we never get anything done, and that's analyze us to death.
Paralysis by analysis? You say, what if we're wrong, Jim? What has China done for us lately?
Today they did.
I mean, they're open, what, 2 coal plants a week? And we're worried about our pit. We feel so strongly about this. We don't impose this on other nations. They can do as they wish. And so who do we punish? Our businesses, the poor people. We say more regulations. At the medium ground of climate smart, the cost will be $250 million a year. 1 year of that kind of revenue would fix 205. The commission voted 5-0 last year on the CRC, the Columbia River Crossing. And we took a position, and this was brought forward by Commissioner Bernard, I'll give that to him. I said, sure, you can do the CRC after you fix 205. And that's what got that on the list, hopefully for EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, which will cost millions here in the next 5 years or so. But we are a drop in the bucket. I think we heard today that total tailpipe emissions amount to 2% of the cause of greenhouse gases. I don't mind doing our part, but when do you draw the line saying, enough regulations? Let's let business go on and be business. By punishing people and causing congestion and having them get out of their cars, we will cause a great loss of time and revenue and productivity in our society. We are doing a transit study this next year because we had 5 different cities talk with me at my chair and mayor's meeting about the fact that they were going to do a study on alternative or supplemental transit in their cities because there just isn't enough supplied by TriMet. Oregon City is desperate for lines out off the main beaten path, so to speak. And we certainly Jim talked about the Mountain Express, what a great success that is. We have a lot of unincorporated rural Clackamas County that feels greatly underserved when it comes to transit. By doing that, we will eliminate our own share of greenhouse gases. But it is a tremendous amount of money. And our regional transportation plan, if that was implemented right now, it would itself cause a great reduction. I don't know if it reached the 20%. I don't think Metro has established guidelines on how the measurements will continue year after year to see what they achieved with throwing tens of millions of dollars at the problem. So, there's alternative and supplemental transit is something that I think is very important for our future. You just read an article today about the Uber, and Portland won't let Uber in. I think some people here have traveled. We went back to D.C., and the lobbyist who we have working for us says, oh, man, I'll get you from there to there easily. And the next thing you know, there's this guy with a nice car and opened the doors and said, get in. It was cheap, fast, efficient. And we need more transportation of that type, especially for the people who are low income and certainly the infirm to be able to get where they need to go and not wait for the TriMet bus. So we'll be bringing out that study at the first part of the year, hiring a consultant to do the analysis. And Mr. Dan Chandler, our strategic policy administrator, has been in contact with the cities that are interested. And there's 5 of them that say, go ahead, because we were thinking about doing it ourselves, and we can certainly do a bigger job of it, not necessarily a better one, with participation from our potential partners. As is mentioned today, I think Paul mentioned it, that we have more transit agencies in our county than any of the other counties. And we're very proud that Canby can do theirs, Sandy can do theirs, Molalla can do theirs, Wilsonville with the SMART system. And so that connectivity between those agencies and TriMet is as important as anything else in transportation. But I sure would like, and I've been harping on it since I took office, I'd love to get 205 fixed. Carletta Collette today, Metro Councilor, said it would be $1 billion. That just ain't so. It's been ratcheted down through some work we found out through Gary Schmidt, our Public and Government Affairs Director. That's more like $250 million. And as Commissioner Bernard said, this is not Clackamas County's problem. This is a regional problem. This is a statewide problem. This is an interstate commerce problem. And somebody has to start paying attention to that, Paul.
Just wanted to add, I think the reason she said it was $1 billion is because the study, the EIS, and some of the regional plans include that the study of widening 205 will include a light rail line.
Make my day.
So that's where the $1 billion comes from.
Actually, she said
We'll
it
just
was
have a
the
vote in
bridge.
Clackamas County and see how that turns out.
It's in the, tomorrow we'll be in Salem. I'll be in Salem, and then part of the documents, if you read through those documents, it even mentions that the light rail line is part of that.
Well, great, let's do it.
Oh, gee. Well, let's have a vote tonight, you're outvoted. So anyway, more questions? I think that was a thought-provoking question by Jason Tuck. You got the 3B in there.
Did we get all your questions answered, Jason?
Transportation funding to address the crisis.
You're talking about maintenance?
Maintenance, capital.
Go ahead.
Well, so C4's recommendation, which we're trying to build up support for whatever it is. I'd say there's a difference in opinion. Whether it's vehicle registration fee, gas tax, or a utility fee, we're working to decide out what's best. But the difference in opinion is probably how that money's spent. Now, the county, as far as the county's concerned, I'd say the majority consensus, which John uses all the time,
It's a great one.
is that for the county, it'd be road maintenance. It's frankly, I don't care how the cities spend the money. They have to sell it to their citizens. So, many cities, because they already have gas tax, vehicle registration, some utility fee, some way of raising money. Frankly, they don't want the money. They could probably use some money for maintenance, but they don't want to focus on maintenance. There may be some capital needs. There may be some opportunity to use those dollars for matching. But as far as the county, we're so far in the hole, we need all we can just to maintain our roads. So we're still reaching out to the community to gather support for whatever we do and see what's possible. And I believe that, I hope, we are still working on a specific list of projects that we can kind of click off as we move down through the project list, which we did in Milwaukee. And something else controversial,
Oh, not again.
I didn't put it out for a vote in the city of Milwaukee, and I don't believe Happy Valley did either. I don't think you can educate the public countywide about the need. So I think you have to look at something reasonable. From Milwaukee, it was, I believe, a 2-cent gas tax and a $5 per household. And I never had any opposition, but we spent 2 years talking to the public. And I think you need to do that and then see, make the decision and hope it holds.
The Board of County Commissioners each think about this particular issue differently. We're not in agreement. There might be agreement that most of those dollars go towards transportation by 3 to 4 of the commissioners. I can't remember the count exactly or the nuances to that. The effort by C4 has been, explore the mechanisms, explore ways to identify the projects that are important to each of the communities and the cities and so forth, and allow those particular communities to divvy the dollars out as they see fit, whether it's capital projects that take care of a dangerous intersection or build a sidewalk or build a road, or it's maintenance and patching, whatever that may be, that the cities have the flexibility to do it, and that it's a county-wide effort, not a Clackamas County only effort. I think that was the effort brought forth with no particular mechanism identified, no particular fee or tax identified, other than studied 4 of them. And the newest one that's coming out now is vehicle miles traveled. About 2 weeks ago, just to give an idea of what that's about, 2 weeks ago, ODOT had a open house in downtown Portland introducing their little pilot project. It's to be 5,000 users be able to sign up to a program that you insert a reader into a connector in your car, and it will monitor how many miles you drive, and then that data will be downloaded. And I think they base it on it'll be 1.5 cents per mile is the estimated cost, and that if you don't drive as much and you drive less than the anticipated amount, you'll get a refund, and if you drive more, you'll pay a little bit more. But the reason that's going on is because gas tax has, back in the day when it was invented, all vehicles got about the same amount of mileage, and the wear and tear on the roads was about equal. And today, vehicles don't get the same amount of gas mileage. Electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles, they still wear out the roads, but they don't pay the same amount or use any gas or far less gas. So now there's a disproportionate share. On top of that, fuel economy has gone up considerably, so we're actually collecting less per mile than we ever did before. And so this means this new pilot project might turn out to be the means in which perhaps a gas tax is eliminated sometime in the future, and this replaces that. So we'll be looking to see what that does. I think it's a one-year pilot project, and 5,000 people can, again, sign up to that program. But there's concerns about privacy, and I think there's ways electronically that that data can be safely transmitted without transmitting personal information about your car, where you've been, or that type of thing. So look for that. So that'll be the fifth thing, but that's not something that C4 ever talked about, but I think that's something that's becoming more discussed from coast to coast right now, is being looked at real hard, because we realize that gas tax is just it's an outdated means of collecting revenue to fix our roads.
Well, I emphasize that Clackamas County is not studying vehicle miles traveled.
Correct.
And we'll add that in with the new carbon tax, which our governor has talked about, and it'll be easier and cheaper to drive all the time, right? Clackamas County, we've talked about this, and it's education and outreach. The plan that C4 had drafted by Gary Schmidt in Public and Government Affairs talked about education and outreach. We took a hold of that, and we said we will do that. We've done it for a period of time, then measured through a poll, and found that people don't understand how poor our roads are in condition. And in fact, I think it was in the 65 percentile or more that thought our roads were just ducky. Well, they ain't. We are down $17.5 million, and just to maintain what we have and start an improvement program that will take 20 years. Now, if we don't get that amount, we will continue to go further and further in the hole. And so the question is, and I feel like Jim does, I don't really care how cities use their money if they were to get this passed. But I will tell you, coming from Wilsonville, where our pavement road index is up in the 90 percentile, it's going to be pretty tough for anybody to convince Wilsonville voters who already pay a fee, and they're driving on fantastic roads, that they need to pay more. I will just say that. So I'm not sure how this is going to go yet, but I do know that in Washington County, they just had an election deciding whether they would have an increase in their vehicle registration fee. It went down rather soundly. So whatever plan we have, and for the bifurcation of the money that we get, whether they be vehicle registration fees and or gas tax fees, and split 40% with the cities, that will never get us to where we need to be currently unless we impose a 10-cent per gallon gas tax in this county and double the vehicle registration fee. That would get us our necessary $15 million to break even and start a program to recover the roads that are in peril. So we'll continue to discuss this. I would like to just get this over with come next November, frankly, and we will discuss that. But the education part is very important. I believe we can communicate with our citizenry enough, along with partnerships from businesses especially, to convince them that we do need something or things are going to get a lot worse. Several years ago, Commissioner Bernard had the temerity to say, if things get too bad, we'll have to grind up roads, and he took a lot of flack for that. But I don't know what the public expects out of us, and especially on some of our very, very poor roads. We're just putting Band-Aids on that stuff right now. And certainly the main arterials, collectors, and of course the highways maintained by ODOT and freeways, et cetera. If you just drive those, you think everything's fine, but we have a lot of rural roads that are deteriorating quite fast.
Of course, in Wilsonville, they don't just drive around the city and never leave. They eventually have to leave the city, since most of them do. They go to jobs outside the city.
91%.
91%. So they're driving on county roads or state roads anyway. Yeah. So, I mean, the problem isn't going to go away, and like the chair said, the citizens think our roads are great. And I actually went to a conference on transportation, and one of the salespeople was this road grinder. And there are communities where they just block the road and let it go. And hopefully you don't live down that road. But we have areas where huge slides have taken out the road, and we're throwing millions into keeping that road, and 10 people live down the road. So, I mean, what do you do with that problem? It's very difficult to solve. And I drive a Prius, and my gas bill is no longer that big. I'd hate to pay 1.5 cents a mile.
You're not paying your fair share, Commissioner Bernard.
Well, I drive a Cadillac because it's big and it's safe, and I don't want to pay the penny and a half either. Even
I
though
pay it for my lawnmower, my tractor, and for my all my gas-powered equipment. I'm paying tax. They never hit the road.
Well, wow, how's that for a long-winded answer? Oh, here's Lori Dreamer again.
Well, I think this might take up the last bit of time. We
Oh
don't
my
want to keep
gosh,
you all
half an
evening,
hour?
but in the last 3 to 4 months and over the years, your government affairs department has been developing the legislative priorities for the Board of County Commissioners. Can you speak to what those are in priority and maybe, yeah, you better look them up.
I've forgotten Lori.
And again, based on the election, do you see any surprises and will those change based on the efforts that possibly we can move forward with? It sounds like addressing the legislature on the act might be something. I know transportation's been on that, and that might just go as a sub portion of that. But anyway, can you address those? And then as far as Oregon being opposite of what happened federally, as far as the change in Congress, do you expect Oregon as a state to be a little weaker at the federal level, and how will that affect us when those federal funds stop coming our way? So.
Well, you're right, that will take up the rest of the time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of questions. I'll
Yeah.
take the, the one we talked about earlier was the act, and I will see Monday where that goes. The Oregon Consensus Program wanted to come to a conclusion by December, and if we're at an impasse, then we're at an impasse. I think that'll be on our agenda. But actually, Public and Government Affairs said, you know what, instead of carrying 5 or 6 legislative items, let's reduce that and prioritize it. Let's cut it down to 1 or 2. And one of those that we had on there was a legislative ask. We're not in the best position right now, but we're kind of behind the 8 ball. We're not quite have our material prepared and our land identified, so we don't have an ask prepared. And if we don't get it in time, then that might open up some of the ones that the board put aside. I think we had like 6, and I think we reduced it to 2, and the ask, this legislative ask, land ask, grand bargain, if you will, was the big one. But if that takes a back seat because we're not ready, then that's going to open up some other ones. I'll let my colleagues address the remainder.
Well, as mentioned previously, Commissioner Bernard said, and we, our commission agrees with this, that 205, transportation-wise, we're going to continue to advocate for that because it's not just our problem. But in addition to that, right now, and this is an administrative rule, an administrative rule, basically when they started doing the rulemaking on the urban-rural lands divide, they have the same force and effect as an Oregon revised statute. And we all know that. The OAR, as they're called. In this particular case, it was rulemaking, where ironically they said, we have a lot of rural cities, but if you want to go from one rural city to another rural city, you must pass through rural reserve. So they passed a rule that said we cannot enhance any of those roads between the 2 rural cities. So in other words, if you wanted to put a safety turn lane, make it a 3-lane configuration so people can safely turn on or off the highway, you cannot do that. That needs to be corrected. We have a lot of weigh-in from Washington County on that. This morning, the Clackamas County Business Alliance expressed their support for removing that ridiculous rule because we're talking about public health, safety, and welfare here. We're not just talking about widening the roads so we can have more farm stands, for goodness sakes. This is a necessity. So we're going to be working on that. We're going to be working on continuing to advocate for Sunrise Phase 2. Those are really two of the big ones. We have toned it down from previous years, not to say that we're not going to have our lobbyists continue to work on things down there, and especially not to say that we won't react to particular legislation by taking a stand during the legislative session itself. We will continue to do that, but we're kind of boning it down to what some of our top priorities are, and those are two of the top transportation priorities.
So we all serve on various committees in Salem through Association of Oregon Counties. I serve on the Justice Reinvestment Grant Committee. So House Bill 3194 authorized a certain amount of money based on a desire to reduce prison population. So basically, if we don't have to build a prison, we get so many millions of dollars. And the committee that I am on is looking at making the rules for how counties can get some of those dollars, as long as they continue to reduce the number of people they send to prison. I think that marijuana laws are going to change. A lot of folks that may have gone to prison won't go, so that's good. That means more money for the counties to invest in community corrections programs, juvenile justice programs, drug rehabilitation programs, and and maybe our courts. So that's pretty exciting. On the community corrections side of it, we basically say we need a certain amount of money, and if the state doesn't give it to us, we're giving you back community corrections. And so on that committee, which I've been on for a number of years, we make sure that the state gives us enough money to keep our programs going. And that way, those people aren't going to jail or they're not going to prison. They're a lot cheaper to work on in drug programs, those kind of programs that change their behavior, and there's been a lot of success. And then juvenile programs, frankly, if you stop stop the criminal activity before they end up in our courts and in our prisons, you can save a lot more money. So we're looking at programs working with kids 0 to 4 years old. Teaching families how to be great parents and how to be successful. So I'd say that our goal has been to invest the dollars that we might receive from the state in the best possible way, and probably one of our 60% of our budget is our sheriff's department. And a good portion of that is the jail. So if we can save money by, reducing criminality, we can save the county a lot more money and put them in programs that we feel have the greatest return on investment. And I think we've been doing that. So, and then, Paul and I are both on a few committees at AOC. I'm the co-chair of the Public Safety Committee. And we work with the state, basically focusing on state police, on how funding those programs that have the greatest return. And that's probably been my focus since I've been there, to make sure that we're addressing those programs. And last year we opened a Family Justice Center, a safe place to address violence in families, and it's just been a huge success. I look forward to talking about how we can expand that program and save more lives. So,
Lori, you asked one question, and I know we didn't get to it. Do you remember what it was?
Based on the change across the country, Oregon didn't.
Microphone. The people want to hear you, Lori.
Apologize. Based across the country, there was a change, and our federal legislators had quite a foothold back in Washington. Do you see that changing? And I expect it to change somewhat as far as their seniority goes. And how will that affect, do you believe, Oregon as a whole? And that obviously those funds will not funnel down to the counties and or the cities, and are we even thinking about that?
Well, you know, we do have a very excellent lobbying firm, Ball Janik, back at the nation's capital. And we got a briefing here, it was about 5 weeks ago, where they anticipated that there may be a shift, and specifically that both the House and the Senate might be under Republican control. I'm just reciting what they predicted. We suffer a lot when programs are started by the feds, by the state, and then abandoned, whether it's incrementally abandoning it or just saying, hey, you're on your own, go ahead and fund it. We've talked recently about backfilling programs and what that costs. What they said is that you can anticipate cuts. You can anticipate specifically in health, housing, and human services, which is a second largest employer in the county behind the sheriff and community corrections. You can anticipate cuts, and we're going to have to weather the storm. It will have an effect on the services we deliver and are mandated to deliver, specifically that is public safety and public health, and there'll be other trickle-down effects. But I'm anxious to see that there won't be gridlock and there won't be presidential beating to such an extent that it'll remove them from their acknowledgement of the responsibilities they have to this nation to keep it functioning. So, you know, it's a change of guard. It's their turn. We'll see how well they do.
Well, I guess I would add that we don't look to the federal government for much anyway. I mean, except for health, housing, human services, there's not much coming from Washington, D.C. anyway, and there's not much coming from Salem. You know, we survive on our property tax revenue, and those programs in health, housing, and human services, which are very important. You know, we're going to have to talk about how important they are when it comes to the budget, and whether we reinvest in them, some of your tax dollars. We'll have to have that discussion, but I think the word backfill, I mentioned it the other day, should go away, because it's really about, you know, what we as residents of Clackamas County think is the most important investment. It's not whether somebody takes something away. And I've been a commissioner 6 years. I'm going on my 7th year. This is the best budget we're going to have. We've had in 6 years. So I'm excited about looking at programs that have proven successful. And but I can also say that I doubt that there's a board here that's looking at new programs. But we're going to look at what's been successful, and if the federal government takes our money away, we're going to look at whether we want to invest in that program because it's proven to be successful.
You know, there's a few programs on the federal side, the Safe Routes to Schools. I heard just on the news here the other night how that's getting region-wide attention again. We are in that program. The cities benefit from that program. The county benefits. So I know there'll be some emphasis on keeping that program alive. It really goes to needy areas with a certain demographic. That's a big one. You know, there's things that we can do in Washington, D.C., our Congress and Senate can do that don't cost money. They're policy things. And I know that there's a strategy before the election last week, before the election was, assuming that the Senate would still remain in Democratic control, that, oh, well, we just won't fund the water regulation, the surface water regulation. I forgot what department that was. We just won't fund it. And I said, well, that's fine. If you don't fund it, you don't enforce it. But the really problem is that here in Oregon, we have lawsuits. We have a lot of litigation, and they tie us up. So that federal regulation, they ram down our throats, and it ties up in courts, and nothing gets logged. Our natural resources we spoke to earlier, now we have to acquire property to drain or to have our water pool in a swale versus draining it as we typically drain it for fish protection and so forth. So we have all these regulations that still don't cost money to really change. It just takes some tenacity and the will to do it. So if we can maybe we can lobby for that. That'll be one thing. The other big thing is the Highway Trust Fund. I don't know where everyone will land on that. Hopefully, because it's in debt, it's part of our national debt. There is a federal gas tax, but the Highway Trust Fund borrows money basically, and that's really new money. And that money, I'm not too worried about the distribution coming back, but if the Highway Trust Fund is not made whole, then even some of the current projects we have in play today are in jeopardy. We will need federal assistance for Phase 2 of Sunrise. We'll need federal assistance for any major highway project. Without that, we'll have to do it locally. So we don't know at the state legislative level. We don't know if there's the willingness for a package similar to the Joint Transportation Act of 2009, where we got the Sunrise Phase 1 funded, we got the Jug Handle project funded, and some other projects around the region funded. We had the Speaker of the House at that time was a Clackamas County State Representative. We had a lot of pull there, so we were able to get a couple projects for Clackamas County only. So those are some of the things that we need to look at in the event the Highway Trust Fund's not made whole. They don't renew that. Other strategies, as far as Oregon being a Democratic state and a Republican-held House and Senate, maybe there's a different strategy there. I don't know what it's going to be. We'll have to wait and see what our Paul Janik and others suggest as far as trying to bring more dollars to Oregon versus maybe a more favored state like Texas, for example, that has huge economic development, not just potential, but they're getting a lot of stuff done. So that'll be interesting. I don't profess to be an expert in that at all, but I think it's something you need to look at.
I don't mean to disagree with Commissioner Bernard, but we get a lot from the federal government. Here we're talking about I-205. That's not going to be ODOT building that. That's going to be, has to be, majority of it funded by the federal government. Right now, they're talking about a commuter rail from Eugene to Vancouver, of which the state share is $600 million, and that won't be sustainable by the fares that are collected. And the majority of that, 80%, actually comes from the federal government. This year, we've enjoyed grants for CCOM, our emergency communications, from the federal government, from engineering department from the federal government. We mustn't forget that the community development block grants, which are very important to most of our cities, comes from the federal government. So we get a lot from the federal government, and if we're thinking we're not getting anything from the federal government, and we're not going to get something from the federal government, then we shouldn't go back in the spring to see the federal government and to ask them for anything. But I believe it is worthy, and Paul Janik did talk about the possibility that earmarks may return. Now, they've been erased for a while, but as a perfect example of how earmarks can work for our area, it was Congresswoman Darlene Hooley who obtained through an earmark the only portion of 205 that is correctly built, the 3 lanes from Stafford and west to I-5. So the federal government is very important. Getting something out of them takes a little while sometimes, but I do believe that persistence does pay off, and we'll continue to go back and lobby them for funds to help out our state and therefore to help us, or to help us directly.
But sometimes the ties that the requirements for dollars from the federal government are so much. The first dollars I brought back to the city of Milwaukee were Lake Road, and that was in 2001. It just got done last summer.
Yeah.
That was 2001.
Well, and sometimes the matching dollars, when they say, sure, we'll do that, you just produce 20%. 20%, where do we pull that out of the air, right? Anyway, we will continue to work with the federal government, and specifically the state, to try to maintain the programs that we feel obligated to our citizenry to provide. Additional questions? Because we've got
There's Michael.
13 questions, or 13 minutes. 13 questions. Oh my
That's a
gosh.
quick one. I know the county doesn't have a lot of money to spend on urban services. What are you doing to encourage county residents to join an incorporated city?
There's been an UGMA developed. You may know about that. The Urban Growth Management Agreement with the Urban Growth Map. And it says that you folks are going to take all the way down to 205. We encourage you to do that as soon as possible, specifically around that Eagle Landing area. In addition to that, Milwaukee will be encouraged, and they're allowed to take in all that is all the way up to 205 coming east. We have encouraged that, and I know each commissioner has talked before about areas that act like cities but aren't, and that would specifically be the area I grew up in, and that's Oak Grove. I have dared say several times that they should become a city, because it is extremely tough for this county to provide urban services. Now, we know that they have Oak Lodge Sanitary and Oak Lodge Water, and that's great, but it's the roadways that catch us. You know, I've said before that $17 million hole, that really we shouldn't be building anymore until we can maintain what we got. That's like saying I'm building a new porch on my house, but I haven't painted it in years and the roof's leaking. I mean, you know, we've got to be responsible in that regard, and that'll be continuing work. But we encourage people to become a city because ours are so separated from each other. It does have a net detrimental effect, I think. I think it's better that those areas that are unincorporated see if they can petition, and some do, as you know. Some of our cities have votes, like Westland and Canby, to annex properties, but Happy Valley does not. Milwaukee, I think, does not. Is that right, Jim?
They do.
They do have a vote. But we encourage them to get within a city and enjoy the services provided by them. I said enjoy, Lori. Don't give me a stink eye.
This has been a long-standing issue and a very difficult, and Clackamas County is not unlike Washington County, other counties that have unincorporated areas. And but what's unique about at least the Oak Lodge, Jenny's Lodge area is that it's the only area, I believe, in the state that is unincorporated, contiguous with cities, that relies on no contiguous city for any service whatsoever. It's got pays its way for everything. Voted for every library measure, voted for every public safety measure, voted to have their own water district, sewer district, had their own fire district until they merged. So they pay their own way and don't rely on, and now, frankly, the table's turned. Now with the library, advent of the library district, and all the libraries being located in, ideally, when that's in full. That's another topic.
Yeah,
yes.
bring that up.
When are those cities gonna annex in those and take control of those libraries that were built? But so Gladstone just passed their library measure, and what we have right now is a reverse situation where, at least in that area, the unincorporated area will be subsidizing the library in Gladstone. I think 65% of the funds collected for the Gladstone Library will come from the unincorporated area, and 35 or 30, some smaller percentage, will come from the city. So now the reverse is actually true, that the unincorporated area is actually going to subsidize that library, you know, if and when it gets built. I'm sure it will at this point in time. But you know, we're hoping, as the chair earlier mentioned, we really hope that the cities actually annex in their growth management area, you know, through that agreement. You have that whole area there, and I would encourage that. And within there is that completely refurbished library, sitting there just waiting to be taken over by the city of
Keep
Happy
picking
Valley.
on that scab. I even went to Boring, Oregon, and said, hey, you know, you want some autonomy, so we're not the city fathers anymore. Become a city. Now, unfortunately, that was right about tomato season. So it wasn't a good day for me escaping them. They were not happy campers. But we will continue to encourage those who want autonomy, who want more control, who want governance that they have closer control with, to become cities or areas adjacent to cities that should annex to you. Anything else on that? Well, we want to make sure they're trying to time this for cable TV. We still got 7 minutes, so.
I should say that, you know, during the urban rural reserve process, the Stafford area was set aside as a potentially brought into, become, I can't even remember what it's called, to be brought in, but the
Growth boundary.
Yeah, the urban growth boundary. So the issue there is that Clackamas County isn't going to develop Stafford or Borland or any of that. A city has to do it. And I think we still stand behind our desire to have cities, do all that. And the city is a great form of government. And many cities were created for various reasons. Milwaukee, as I know, was created because of some dynamite stored on the railroad tracks. Since they had no ability to get rid of it, they became a city so they could zone it out. And that's how Milwaukee became a city. Happy Valley, I don't know why Happy Valley became a city, but it'd be interesting to find that out. So we're not interested in creating unincorporated cities in Clackamas. Frankly, we can't afford it.
I was hoping you were going to say that had something to do with C4, but no.
Yeah, C4.
One thing I do want to say is that Happy Valley, if you look at what's happened in the last 20 years, 15 years, Happy Valley has done a lot of good things out here. I think they hold a lot of promise and hope for future job development in the area, and knowing all the going-ons to the east here with Damascus, and still some uncertainty that as things pan out there, and we can again encourage phase 2 of Sunrise, and I think if Happy Valley, getting to Michael's question or just a moment ago about the unincorporated areas, if you were to, I think, take a little bit more of that into your area, I think we might be in a better position to demonstrate that we the county and we Happy Valley are kind of ready to take on that phase, that industrial area. I think that's the future in the next 10 years for development in this area. We got to catch up on the job. We can't have all these people leaving Clackamas County every day and going elsewhere, not meeting the requirement for jobs that we need. We have a huge shortage in jobs, and that's just a great opportunity. But I think Happy Valley is well poised, well organized, have a nice city hall, have a great staff, and I think they have the competencies necessary to grow and develop this area. And so I just want to give my compliments to the mayor and the city councilors for all their great work and where they brought Happy Valley compared to where it was years back. So congratulations for really great work.
I would like to apologize if we got any of these questions wrong because Martha's not here.
You can't pick on Martha when she's not here. And besides that, the Happy Valley councilors are happy. I can see them sitting in the front row, and they're very happy, and the city manager's happy, and the mayor's happy. And unless you all have an additional question, you've got about one more left here because we want to be on time for our video rebroadcast, so be sure to look for that later on. One more question. We promise we'll answer short. Promise.
Don, do you have a question?
Our county administrator, Mr. Krupp is here. I don't know if a camera can hone in on him, but just want to say how happy we are with Mr. Krupp, our county administrator. We've had him for a year now, and he's been a real shining star with this county. When he came in, he met with the executive management team. He said, you know, what we need to focus on is our customer. And that's anybody who calls us, anybody who walks in the door, whether they're a taxpayer or not, those are our customers. And by his work in this past year, he has shown his emphasis to that and his dedication to this county. What's interesting about Mr. Krupp versus his predecessor, Mr. Krupp is everywhere. Mr. Krupp goes to everything. He's a great fan of theater, so he goes out to a lot of local theater, but he also gets around to local meetings where the people we deal with are. And I think it gives him an appreciation for when we talk about issues related to those particular communities, it gives him appreciation as to who the characters are. And he's a great character identifier.
Yeah, let's send him out to Boring and talk about incorporation.
Actually, send him to Boring to talk about a road fee. And that's always a very exciting discussion over there. I can tell you firsthand, it's a very exciting discussion. The most exciting road fee discussion I've had yet in the county.
Ladies and gentlemen, we certainly appreciate you putting up with us tonight. Without the two women, we are just lost. And so we appreciate you being here tonight, and certainly those that will view this later. As always, we have an open door policy. We will be developing this next year consideration as to how many of these we should have again. We appreciate your attendance tonight, and considering the snow, possible snow, coming tonight and or tomorrow, we ask you to drive safely home and tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming. This meeting is adjourned.